Something big is happening inside the San Francisco 49ers building right now. Moves are being made quietly, but they matter more than most fans realize. And the names on this list could directly shape the 2026 season in ways nobody is talking about yet. Before we dive in, make sure you like the video, share it with a fellow Niners fan, and subscribe so you never miss breaking 49ers news. Now let's get into it, because the 49ers wasted absolutely no time responding to that painful playoff loss to the Seattle Seahawks. Less than 48 hours later, Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch stepped to the podium for their end-of-season press conference, and behind the scenes, the front office immediately went to work. Futures contracts were handed out. Developmental pieces were locked in. And the 90-man off-season roster started taking shape fast. Here's the big picture. San Francisco signed 15 players to futures contracts, and while some of these names might not jump off the screen, several of them absolutely deserve your attention. The first 5 minutes of this breakdown are all about breaking news and roster movement, so let's go player by player. We start in the trenches with Isaac Alarcón, an offensive lineman whose journey to the NFL is anything but ordinary. Raised in Mexico, Alarcón didn't even start playing football until he was 14 years old. He eventually earned his way into the league through the NFL's International Pathway program, originally with the Dallas Cowboys. He joined San Francisco in 2025, but his season never really got started due to a suspension that wiped out the first 6 games. The 49ers always viewed him as a developmental project, not a 53-man roster lock, but bringing him back signals they still believe there's upside worth investing in. Next up is Evan Anderson, a defensive tackle out of Florida Atlantic who first arrived as an undrafted free agent after the 2024 NFL Draft. Anderson actually saw the field in 12 games during his rookie season and flashed legitimate interior presence. If you remember that red zone stand against Tampa Bay, that was Anderson shooting through the line and blowing up the play. He didn't appear in a game during 2025, but he stayed on the practice squad, and the coaching staff clearly still views him as valuable depth along the defensive interior. Then there's Eli Apple, a name most fans recognize. A former first-round pick by the New York Giants back in 2016, Apple is one of the more experienced players on this list. Over his career, he's recorded 6 interceptions and more than 60 pass breakups while bouncing around the league. San Francisco originally brought him in when the cornerback room was decimated by injuries. His role was primarily on special teams, but his veteran experience still carries weight, especially for a team that's constantly dealing with secondary attrition. Here's a question worth asking early on: how much should the 49ers prioritize proven experience over raw upside when building out the back end of the roster? Another returner to note is Junior Bergen, the 7th-round pick from the 2025 NFL Draft. Bergen's college resume at Montana is impressive. He's one of the most productive punt returners in FCS history, tied for the most punt return touchdowns ever at that level. But the NFL transition hasn't been smooth. His preseason and training camp performances didn't move the needle, and his development as a wide receiver is still very much a work in progress. With Sky Moore emerging as a reliable and explosive return man in 2025, Bergen faces an uphill battle just to carve out a role. San Francisco also retained William Bradley King, a defensive end originally drafted in the 7th round by Washington in 2021 out of Baylor. He spent time on the 49ers practice squad and quietly impressed the coaching staff with his effort and consistency. He's not a flashy edge rusher, but he's exactly the type of depth player teams like San Francisco value. One of the more intriguing defensive backs brought back is Derek Canteen, an undrafted free agent out of Cincinnati. If you paid close attention during training camp, Canteen was everywhere. He consistently made plays on the football, finishing his college career with 9 interceptions and over 30 pass breakups. Some people inside the fanbase genuinely believed he had a chance to sneak onto the 53-man roster. That didn't happen, but this futures deal keeps the door open. At this point, it's clear what the 49ers are doing. They are loading up on depth, versatility, and developmental upside while keeping competition fierce at every position. Moving back to the defensive front, Andrew Farmer signed a futures contract after bouncing around as an undrafted free agent from Division II Lane College. His stat line won't wow you, but his length and athletic traits absolutely do. He produced at a high level in college and spent time with Denver before landing in San Francisco. This is a classic, tools over polish, signing. One of the more important additions comes in the secondary with Darrick Forrest. The 49ers signed him just before the playoff matchup with Seattle after Jair Brown missed time with a hamstring injury. Forrest is a former fifth-round pick by Washington out of Cincinnati and played in a loaded college defensive backfield that included Sauce Gardner and Kobe Bryant. He has started 17 NFL games and appeared in over 40. Let's be honest, the safety position has been a recurring issue for San Francisco. Forrest brings legitimate experience to a spot that needs stability. Now here's the question of the day, and I want to see your answers in the comments. Should the 49ers aggressively address safety in the draft, or can veterans like Darrick Forrest hold things together in 2026? Linebacker Jalen Graham is also back. A seventh-round pick out of Purdue, Graham is best known for his special teams contributions. Injuries forced him into defensive snaps at times, but his true value remains on coverage units. He's not flashy, but he's reliable, and coaches trust players like that. At quarterback, Adrian Martinez earns another look. The former Nebraska and Kansas State star is a true dual-threat quarterback who spent time as Brock Purdy's backup when injury struck. Under Kyle Shanahan, quarterback development is always fascinating, and Martinez remains one of those long-term projects worth monitoring. On the offensive line, Drake Nugent returns as well. The former Stanford transfer who finished his college career at Michigan was the starting center for a national championship team. While he hasn't locked down a starting role in San Francisco, he showed enough in preseason action to project as a potential backup interior lineman. The 49ers still need upgrades at center, but Nugent provides insurance. Brandon Parker also joins the group. A former third-round pick by the Raiders in 2018, Parker never lived up to expectations, but experience matters. With 59 career games and 33 starts, he offers depth to an offensive line that has struggled with consistency and health. Wide receiver Malik Turner is another familiar name. An undrafted free agent from Illinois, Turner has carved out a career as a special teams contributor and emergency depth option. And remember this, due to injuries, he was actually on the field during the final, game-winning drive against Philadelphia, catching passes from Brock Purdy. That alone tells you how much the coaching staff trusts him. Now we get to the name fans are buzzing about the most, Sebastian Valdez, nicknamed the Hulk. An undrafted defensive tackle out of Washington, Valdez